My name is Bob Burke, and I'm going to tell you a story over a series of videos. And the purpose of telling this story is to share the odd synchronicities in my life and hopefully add some context to why I'm here at all. The story tonight I'm going to tell is a story about Star Guests, the Design for Mortality book, which was written by an author by the name of William Dudley Pelley and published in 1950, just after Pelley was released from federal prison in Terre Haute, Indiana. The story first came to my attention when the book God's Man in War was released by Peter Levenda and Tom DeLonge. And the story of William Dudley Pelley is actually included in the preface, sort of laying out the stories that are going to be told in the book and throughout the series. At the time, I didn't give it a whole lot of thought. I just saw, hey, here's the story, and, read through the Book of Gods, which was really about encompassing the idea that all religion is cargo cult religion, which is to say that there can be very realistic interactions with very elevated and powerful mystic forces, but that doesn't mean that those forces are worthy of a religion, if you will, so much as worthy of being understood for what they are. Those skills, those unique items about these beings might be in and of themselves mystic and magical, but what they really are is just things that we don't understand from an advanced individual consciousness in our life. So I had actually finished the book Gods, and I was looking for something else to study. And the reason I was looking for something else to study was because at the time I had been writing a book, and this is a copy of one of those journals that I wrote, and I wrote over 5 years. I began writing in November of 2012, and in the spring of 2013, actually late April 29th, I was sitting in my office, and Steve Bassett and the Citizens Hearing on Disclosure was about to occur, and so I sat down for the week and I watched the entire Citizens Hearing on Disclosure. And a day or two after the hearing had gotten over, I went back and I was reviewing a number of different items within the hearing, and I came across Dan Sheehan being asked by Senator Gravel what might cause an uncontrolled disclosure. And Dan said a natural disaster, to which I immediately realized that it was not a natural disaster, although it certainly could also be a natural disaster, but that it was a man-made disaster. It was the economic collapse. And it occurred to me at that moment that, I don't know if you'll ever be able to see that, you can probably pause it, but right there, on May 4th, 2013, I realized that disclosure was coming. So you can imagine my surprise a few years later when Tom DeLonge comes out and says, I have people that I'm working with in the government and we're disclosing the extraterrestrial phenomenon. Well, there you go. And so one of the things that I did when I approached the book Gods is I approached it from a very pragmatic standpoint. If I'm right that disclosure's coming, and Tom DeLonge is telling the truth, that he is being shared information that explains much of what's been going on, or at least some very large parts, then I should trust what he's saying. I should trust the books that he's putting out, and I should try to understand the story that they're trying to tell. And so after I finished Gods, and I was looking for that next rabbit hole to go down and, start writing on and start taking notes on, I went, wasn't there a book listed in Gods? And so I cracked open the story again and happened to be right in the front of the book. And so I went on and I found it on eBay and I ordered a copy of it off of the internet. And the book itself is a book about an individual named William Dudley Pelley, who claims to be having a clairaudient communication from some sort of force that at the time he isn't quite sure what to call or what to say it is. Over the course of the book, this clairaudient writing, which is what actually occurs, reveals a number of questions and a number of answers about the soul and the spirit. And when it's complete, the story itself actually includes some very stunning revelations, one of which I was quite stunned, fit the narrative of the cargo cult religion, which is to say that an advanced being or advanced beings have been visiting Earth, but we haven't understood properly what they were, and because of that, we've created religions. And about halfway through the book, it is revealed that the clairaudient channeler, that is the entity or the being that is channeling to William Dudley Pelley, is none other than Christ. And that there needs to be a slight correction. And the correction is that Christ doesn't desire to be deified, but rather desires, if you will, that we look at him as an elder brother, and actually asks that if you would like, please reference him as the elder brother, because he really is nothing more than a consciousness like yours and mine, except at a much higher and more elevated level. You know, when I read the book, and it really challenged my paradigm, because here we had Christianity, which is a one-and-done type of religion. Hey guys, you're born, be really, really good. This guy came and died for your sins, and then you die, you go to heaven, and you're there for eternity. It turned that around. And from a Christ perspective, it said, hey, we've come to earth, and guess what? You're here to learn something. There is a purpose to being here. And when you die, you do go to this place, if you will, but you will return and you will re-experience new things. And in particular, it talked about your karma. It talked about how you create ties in your existence, which really create a tension that needs to be revealed or needs to be released, that you owe to some individuals, if you will, a debt or a karmic balance that has to be paid. And so I sat for a moment when I read the book, as I was about in the middle of the book or late in the book, and I said to myself, well, if this is true, if we are connected to people around us, if people are leaving hints and clues, if there is a pattern, then this pattern should make sense and I should be able to see it in some way. And I asked myself, as I often do, a question. And the question I asked is, okay, if I'm reincarnated, then maybe I can figure out what my story is. And amongst other thoughts that came to mind, one very serious implication began to form. And that's the story that I'm going to tell you over these videos in 15-minute chunks. What I will tell you is the story that really shocked me the most, which occurred when I was in the Air Force in 1988. I entered the Air Force on November 1st, 1988. I belonged to 3708 BTE, the BTS, and my tech sarge was Tech Sergeant Fodge. There's a gentleman in the other flight, an Airman Diego. And someday, if you'd like to verify this with Airman Diego, you can. But Airman Diego walked up to me, apropos of nothing, with my bald head, and told me that I reminded him of a very specific band member of a very specific band. That band and that member will reveal at the end. If you want to find Diego, maybe he'll tell you now. You know, it's funny because when I was in basic training, I have a very specific memory of the Tech Sergeant Fodge, saying an offhand comment one day to the effect that my flight, this flight that we had been put together as, was made up of a bunch of individuals that the Air Force didn't know what to do with. And perhaps that's exactly true. The Air Force didn't know what to do with us. But maybe it was also true that by that time the Air Force was looking at things, and here was a group of individuals from a pattern, that is, when they were born, where they were born, what other characteristics they may have included, I don't know. But my entire flight was made up of people they just didn't know what to do with. And something tells me November 1st, 1988 is an important date for that as well. The book Starguests is not just a single book, but Pelley has actually written an entire series of these books, most of which I've read. And on a later episode, I will tell you what happened when I shared this story to a family member, a couple of family members. The story and the idea of reincarnation is one that says there should be connections. There should be things in your life that will make sense, and things in your life that will suddenly have characterizations and character that didn't exist before. And that's really the experience that I had. And as I looked at all of my very odd experiences, my synchronicities and all, I came to the conclusion that something was affecting the path of my life, that I was having experiences that were formative. Today I was listening to the Manly P. Hall book on the unknown history of America, and he talks about Benjamin Franklin, and that Benjamin Franklin truly had a desire not to become argumentative about anything. He wanted to learn. He wanted to be a student. He wanted to understand what was going on. But he also was at least pragmatic enough to ask himself, when I say I know something, what do I mean when I know? And what he meant was that he has been told things and that he has had experiences. And when he says that he knows something, those are really what he's referencing, is that he knows what people have told him and he knows the experiences that he's had. And what he has chosen is to believe these things. And I have found that in my life it has become easier to understand what's going on if I do the same thing. And when I talk on these videos and I talk about these experiences, I do speak from a state of knowing. I know these things are true because of my experiences. But that is to say, I know it because it's been said to me and I've heard it, or I've had an experience. But the experiences that I've had have been very real and very formative. And I hope over the next couple weeks, couple months, next couple years, I'll be telling you those stories. I do appreciate your time, and I do appreciate your conscious effort to look at this story. In the description below is the link to Starguests, Designed for Mortality. If you want to see what has been forbidden for you to see, you can feel free to take some time to read the book. If it bothers you that the book was written by a former crazed mystic Nazi, I will tell you that one of the things you are going to find in the series of information by Pelley is that we are looking at a phenomenon that wants us to think. If we are honest about what's happening right now, we are living in the zombie apocalypse. Quite literally, the zombie apocalypse. People are not thinking. And since they're not thinking, they're quite susceptible to, well, buying into all sorts of crazy ideas. What I would hope is that you understand that these barriers were put in place for a reason. They're put in place for a reason to keep weak minds, to keep people who are weak of constitution to think outside of the box, away from exploring ideas that they're just not ready for. If you're not ready to discuss the question of reincarnation, that's fine, but give me a chance to tell you my story. My story began with this book, and it began with me deciding that there is enough evidence that I can know that reincarnation is a fact and is a real thing. I thank everyone for stopping in on this first episode, and take a read below. I think you'll enjoy it. Thank you, and I'll see you next week. Peace.